Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of The Matt Cave. Thank you all so much for spelunking on by. Forgive my voice if it starts to give out by the end of the episode. I've done a lot of recording today, and so this is the last thing I'm doing today as far as recording goes, so my voice might give out by the end, but we'll see. It's been pretty solid, so hopefully it won't happen. But thank you all so much for being here. This week is going to be a very Mammoth-heavy episode, so if you're not about that Mammoth life, I don't understand you, but I forgive you. So I forgive you for not listening this week if hockey is not your thing. But I will also be talking about Real Salt Lake, their bounce-back game against Portland, and also maybe towards the end some talk about the options for the Utah Jazz as we get closer and closer to the lottery. So we'll see what happens at the lottery and move on from there. But hey, thank you all so much for being here. Please, if you haven't already, please rate and review the podcast. The ratings help a ton. The reviews help out even more. So if you can take a second, rate 5 stars, and then you could say gobbledygook in the review. The algorithms that run our lives just need to see something there. That's really what it is. It doesn't matter what it is. So it just needs words and 5 stars. But hey, you've all been awesome so far. So it's just one more thing, I guess. And then, as always, share this with somebody that you think would enjoy the program. Again, recently I shared that it was 10,000 downloads. That's because of you all. So you all are amazing. Please continue to be amazing. And you've been amazing just by being yourselves. So pat on the back for you all. And you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. That is the Matt Cave Podcast. You can find this on YouTube as well, and by the same name. And that's really it as far as announcements goes. I was on the Radio Ronin show, so please go check out Radio Ronin, the podcast. I was on 2 of the last 3 of their shows talking about the playoffs and the Utah Mammoth, Vegas Golden Knights series. So please go listen to them as well. And now let's dive into things. So I'm going to start with the Mammoth, and that series sucked. It did. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to try to pour sugar down your throat and say, well, it was a great learning experience. It sucked. It did. Especially losing 2 overtime games. One overtime game was one of the greatest pushbacks by a team I root for I think I've ever seen. Going down in the manner that the Mammoth did against a team like the Vegas Golden Knights who just don't really give up leads. And they came storming back, even took the lead, and then coughed it away in the final seconds of regulation, and then coughed it away again in the final seconds of the first overtime period. That one hurt. The one that hurt more was the one where Utah basically owned the game. They owned Game 5. They did. But they didn't score the goals when you needed them. Vegas, during that series, showed Utah a lot. And they showed Utah, if you leave anything open, if you take one shift off, you're going to pay for it in the playoffs. And that's what Vegas showed Utah. Both the forwards and defensemen. Veggie was under siege in a lot of those games. I think he didn't do fantastically, but he did do good enough to allow the Mammoth a chance to win. And he is the goalkeeper. If you look across the NHL, there is no longer that goalie. When I was growing up, that goalie was Patrick Waugh. It was Martin Brodeur. It was Dominic Hasek. You don't have those goalies anymore. They just don't exist. For whatever reason, they don't exist. So, we have Veggie, who is a workhorse goalie who needs more games off in the regular season. That's what it boils down to. Because he's one of the most athletic goalies in the NHL. Bar none. He really is. Watch, I'm sure the Mammoth PR team is going to put out a Veggie saves compilation for the season at some point during this offseason. Watch that video and you tell me if he's not athletic. So, he's the goalkeeper for the future. There's a lot of Mammoth fans who are not going to like to hear that, but he is. And I'm okay with it. What needs to happen is he needs to have a solid goalkeeper behind him that can play 25 games and not be a liability. Vitek Vanacek was fantastic in a couple of games. In other games, he was a liability. That won't fly for a team that wants to advance in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It just won't fly. So, that is like chief number one priority, I think, in the offseason for not just the Mammoth, but a lot of different teams, is to improve the backup goalie situation. And there will be options aplenty out there via trade as well as free agency. I'll get into that as we get deeper into the offseason, but just let that be known. I am a veggie supporter. I'm not a veggie head. I'm not going to wear, a broccoli or a beet or a carrot or something, but I am a fan of Karel Vejmelka's. The other things I want to talk about in this series are what I was hearing about Clayton Keller. Did it sound like I was about to cry there? I wasn't. I was swallowing, and then I made that noise, but it's talking about Clayton Keller. Clayton Keller, in those first two games, was not there. And it was the shock of playoff hockey. And the way that the Vegas Golden Knights, I don't necessarily want to give Tortorella too much credit here. I think it was the players on the Golden Knights more so than the coaching staff. They decided in different games, different lines, that they were just going to shut out of the game. In the first two games, it was that top line, and they did a masterclass of it. In other games, it was line 3, where they made J.J. Peterka just not exist. J.J. Peterka didn't record a point in this series. And then in the final games, it was the Logan Cooley line. So Vegas, when you're losing, you don't want to hear, well, give the other team credit. Because you think, well, my team should have just done better. And that's a right way to think. Your team should have just done better. They should have seen what the other team was doing and reacted appropriately. Looking back, hindsight being 2020, Vegas did a fantastically good job of knocking out certain lines during the game. And each and every game, you can see it. So, I'm talking about Clayton Keller here because I saw a lot of stuff online. And yeah, online, I know. Matt, stop looking, but it's what I do. That Clayton Keller isn't a captain. That he shouldn't be a captain. He's not physical enough to be a captain. He's not a playoff captain. I'm going to swear here, so earmuffs. That's bullshit. Watch the games. Clayton Keller was always in the scrums. Clayton Keller's not a big dude. He's not Lawson Krause. He's not Jack McBain or Mikhail Sergachev. He's not going to knock people over. He's not going to knock somebody's block off, but he was always in there. He was always in there. He was always talking to the refs. He was doing everything a captain needs to do. And he's not a vocal, boisterous guy, so you're not going to see him like Alexander Ovechkin screaming at his teammates to do better. That's not him. He leads by example. And throughout the series, he just got better. Throughout the series, you could see and measure his impact. That is what I want in a leader. So, to all of those Mammoth fans who are saying, remove the C from Clayton Keller's chest, I'm going to tell you, shut up. Okay? Not only was he selected to be the captain, he was voted to be the captain by his peers. Shut up. All right. I know it's a little bit more aggressive than I usually am, but that's something I think that needs to be said to Mammoth Nation as a whole, is Clayton Keller is the captain. He proves why he's the captain day in and day out. And oh, by the way, part of being the captain is to be the face of the team. And he has done that, I don't want to say masterfully, but he's done it very well. Being the face of a brand new team in a brand new market where the players and the ownership and the front office have no idea how the market's going to respond to you. He's done a wonderful job spreading hockey. He's done a wonderful job representing the team in the state of Utah. And he does a very good job in media scrums, in press interviews and stuff like that. And one of my favorite things is, you all know I did go to school for sportscasting. We had multiple courses on how to interview athletes, front office people, coaches, and watching some of his post-game interviews, Clayton Keller calls out the journalists asking him questions. You don't see that very often either. They ask him questions, and then the next person asks almost exactly the same question, only with different words, and he just goes, I just answered that. I love that. I want that in my captain. So, Clayton Keller is definitely the captain of the Utah Mammoth, and he should remain so. He's the first one in franchise history, and he should remain the captain until he decides to hang up his skates, which I hope won't be for another 15 years. So that's where we're at with Clayton Keller and me. Now let's move to the defensive core. And the playoffs exposed something that I don't think everybody was ready for, and that's why you play the games. That's why Bill Armstrong has said you just need to play the game so you can find out more about your team. The defensive core throughout the season was better way more often than they were worse. In the playoffs, that fell apart. The fourth line for Vegas dominated in stretches. That's not supposed to happen. And the turnovers in the defensive zone by some of the wingers, but by the defensemen, Mackenzie Weegar, Mikhail Sergachev, Ian Cole, Nate Schmidt, John Marino, Sean Dursey, all of them, they killed momentum at crucial points. And that's not what you expect from a blue line that was built around having that Stanley Cup playoff experience. Each and every guy on that team in the blue line defenseman area has Stanley Cup experience before going into this. All of them. From Ian Cole with 1 million games, all the way down to Sean Dursey, who had a few games in the playoffs as well when he played with the Kings. So those turnovers, they need to work on them. I'm not saying trade everybody away, fire everyone, cut them. No, not at all. There are some tough contract decisions to be made. That's why Bill Armstrong gets paid the big bucks. Ian Cole is out of contract now. Do they re-sign him? Do they leave that door open for a Dmitry Simashev or a Maverick Lamoureux? For my money, well, I'm not going to give away what I'm thinking, but that's a difficult contract decision to be made because Ian Cole was definitely a leader on this team. Definitely. So the defensive unit struggled when it mattered most. It did. But nobody needs to lose their job over it. Okay, so that's the defensive core. So I talked about goalkeeping. I talked about the defensive core. I talked about the captain. Let's talk about the forward unit. JJ Peterka was exposed. That sucks. It does. It sucks for JJ. It sucks for the team. It sucks for fans of JJ. I count myself as a fan of JJ's game. I do. It's starting to seem like he might be a bit of a basket case in that if one thing goes wrong, he allows it to snowball on himself. And so he's hard on himself, almost in a Nikita Kucherov sort of way, where Nikita Kucherov just plays harder. JJ just kind of goes into a shell. And Andre Tourigny needs to learn, and the coaching staff itself as well, needs to learn how to bring him out of it. And that we saw the beginnings of that with him getting benched and with him starting on a lower line and stuff like that, just to see if that sort of push would work. And for my money, it did, for the most part. He didn't score a point, but after that benching, he played harder. He was forechecking harder. He was more physical. He was doing the things necessary to be on the ice. He wasn't just skating in circles like he was before he got benched. That's important. JJ Peterka signed for a long time. He's going to be here for a while. So the coaching staff needs to figure out what buttons to push with him, and I'm pretty confident they will. So that's one player I wanted to call out. Another one I want to call out is easy. It's Kailer Yamamoto. And what's unfortunate for Kailer Yamamoto is him and Michael Carcone kind of play the same game. They do. They skate hard. They do anything that is asked of them by the coaching staff and the leadership team. They just go out and they do it. They go out and they play hockey. And the same compliment is paid to both players, where you know where they're going to be on the ice and you know what they're going to do. I don't think there's higher praise you can have from a teammate. You're comfortable playing with them because you know they're going to be in the right spot at the right time. You listen to any quarterback in football. They're the history of football. Their favorite wide receivers and tight ends were not necessarily the best ones. It was the ones they could count on in the biggest moment. And that's what happens with Kailer Yamamoto and Michael Carcone. They both showed up and showed out. Yeah, Michael Carcone missed a wide open net. You know what he did later? He scored a harder goal to make up for it. So I love Michael Carcone. Yeah, there was that episode where he said he didn't know if he wanted to be in Utah anymore. I think that's been solved with a contract extension. I love having Carcone. With Kailer Yamamoto, it's unfortunate. It's just timing. There needs to be space made for Tijik Inlet. There does. he is at the point where he needs to be in the NHL level. And you need space on the wing for that. Krause is signed. Keller is signed. Schmaltz is signed. Who else do we have on the wing? Oh, yeah, J.J. Peterka. He's signed. Dylan Guenther. Yep, he's signed for a while. Brandon Tanev is still around for a couple years. So that leaves one left. And that's Kailer Yamamoto. That's one that's going to hurt. I think they're going to let him walk because he earned himself a payday with his play this season and especially in this postseason. And I hope he gets to a team where they are going to see his value like Utah did this year. It took Utah a little while to find his value, but they found it. And so that's kind of my preview to what I'm thinking for this offseason for the Mammoth. Obviously, I don't think they're thinking about it right now. I think they're still deconstructing the season and the postseason and all of that stuff. Lucky for me, I'm a fan, and I get to think like that. So the forward group as a whole, disappointed by the end. Vegas shut down the Cooley, Guenther, Yamamoto line. Yeah, Yamamoto scored a goal, but it was off a broken play. It was a wonderful pass from the D zone to Kailer Yamamoto, who just kind of made magic happen. So, what about the rest of the forwards? Nick Schmaltz. I want to take a second to talk about Schmaltzy. I've been hard on Schmaltzy. I have. On this program, on Utah Mammoth Daily, I've been hard on him because of how good we've seen him play, but it just happens in spurts instead of it being consistent over a long amount of time. He had a career season this year, and he absolutely earned the contract that he got. I'm not mad at the contract. I'm not mad that we're going to have 8 more years of Nick Schmaltz. Not at all. Bring it on. He's the guy I want on my team. Just not playing center. He filled in admirably. When Barrett Hayton got injured, and especially Logan Cooley got injured, he was asked to play a position he hadn't played since he was in Chicago and in the early parts of his career. He didn't complain. He didn't sulk. He didn't play poorly. He stepped up, and he played. He even earned the A on his sweater when Mikhail Sergachev was out with injury. That's how much the team thinks of him, too. For my money, and I don't have a lot of it, he's not a center. He's a wing. And that was kind of exposed in the playoffs against guys like Jack Eichel. Because you need a more 200-foot, a little bit more of a physical presence center than what Nick Schmaltz can give you. Nick Schmaltz is... His stick checks are the best in the league. 100% hands down. But you just need a little bit more of a physical presence. And that's just not Schmaltz's game. That's not a knock on him. That's just not his game. And so if he's asked to do something like that, that just throws off the rest of the game. So he is definitely a top-line wing. 100%. So they need a center. That's another thing they need to get this offseason is a true first-line center. There are a few on the market. I'm not going to spoil it for you. There will be an episode in the future because I need something to talk about in the offseason. But that's another thing to target. So overall, I was impressed with the Mammoth this year. I was. The goal was the playoffs, and that was set internally. That was one I echoed. I said this team is going to make the playoffs. They did. Check. Now the next step is to advance in the playoffs. That's next season. So this season was a success. I would give this season an A. 100%. An A, especially in the division that Utah plays in the Central. 3 teams over 100 points. They had the President's Cup winners in this season as well as last season in their division. They had the veteran Nashville Predators, who were making a run towards the end of the year. The Jets, who were the President's Cup winner, they were making a run towards the end of the year. Utah didn't panic. They kept playing their game, and they got to the playoffs. That was the goal. Mission accomplished. And like Mikhail Sergachev said after the game, he said, I know this team. I love this team. And when we set a goal, and it's a clear goal, we achieve it. And we're going to make some noise next year. I agree. I agree 100% with the associate captain, who will have his own episode, I'm sure, either on Utah Mammoth Daily or during this offseason. Hint, I'm a fan of Sergachev's game. I am. All right, so that's the Utah Mammoth thing to talk about today. One more thing for them is the coach. I have been the lead conductor on the Fire Andre Tourigny train. I have on this program as well as on the other one I do. After watching his post-game press conference after the loss in Game 6, I want this man as my coach. just personally. I want him to be my life coach. The way he reacted, the way he just allowed the emotion of the moment to happen, and he wasn't analytical. He wasn't talking in platitudes. He wasn't doing that thing that you expect from a coach after getting eliminated, like we're going to watch the tape, we're going to go back over this, we're going to come back harder that next season. No, that wasn't Tourigny, and I love that. He said, this hurts. This is not the way we wanted to go out. We wanted to give these fans a win and to go back to Vegas. I firmly believed I was going to be going to Vegas today, right now. And he said, I'm not going to be able to answer any questions about what we should have done better, what I should have done to do better. It's too raw. The emotions are too high, and I'm not going to be able to give you the answer that you need, and it's not going to be the answer that I want to give. So we're just going to need to let this one hurt for a bit. Again, what coach is going to say that? Not many, but the good ones do. So I'm hopping off the fire Tourigny train. I am. I'm off. You're going to need to find another conductor for that train, because that's a leader of people. That is a leader of men. That is not Connor McDavid blaming his team. That's not the Toronto sports media looking for scapegoats left and right. That's a guy who said, this sucks. It hurts. We're going to let it hurt, and it's going to fuel us moving forward. That's a guy I want leading my team. Now, the coaches around him, some changes need to be made. I'll go over that this offseason as well. But Andre Tourigny, he is a handful of coaches who have improved year over year. So, he's the coach. Clayton Keller's the captain. Tourigny's the coach. Veggie's the goalie. Mammoth fans get used to it and love it, because teams don't have that clarity. Just look at Toronto and Edmonton. All right, moving on to Real Salt Lake. So, I said they needed to bounce back in a major way after losing back-to-back games to Miami and the Galaxy. And boy, howdy did they. The scoreline read 2-0. It felt like it was about 8-0 by the end of the game. Real Salt Lake was all over the field, whatever. And if it weren't for Portland's goalkeeper, holy Moses, would it have been bad. And one player who didn't hit the score sheet, who should have, he had about 4 different shots go off of the woodwork, is Morgan Guilavogui. My goodness, this kid is good. Oh, I say kid, he's 28. He is good. He just doesn't have the luck. Like in hockey, it's puck luck, right? He just didn't have the luck of the ball bouncing in the right direction. He was fantastic for Real Salt Lake in this game. So, overall, this game was awesome. 2-0. Go watch the highlights on YouTube. Diego Luna was everywhere. He's making his claim to be on the U.S. men's national team come the World Cup. And Zavier Gozo is ascending. This kid could be very, very, very good. And the offense, I am telling you, Spelunkers, the system that Pablo Mastroeni has put in place for this team is perfect for the way that this team is structured. Are they going to win 1 million games? No. Are they going to win every game? No. Are they going to score 10,000 goals? Also, no. But boy, is it fun to watch when it's clicking. And that's what happened against Portland. I've talked about the system before. It's the back line or the defensive midfielders kicking the ball into space for the younger, faster front line that Real Salt Lake has to run under it and to cause havoc in the box. That's exactly what they did in this game. They also actually did a really good job of building through the middle and kind of pushing through a non-existent Portland Timbers midfield. They did a wonderful job of that. Between Diego Luna, Sergei Solans, Mario Guilavogui, or Morgan, excuse me, not Mario. I don't know why I said Mario. Let's go. They did, and Sanabria as well. My goodness, Sanabria had himself a game. This team, when they're clicking, is among the most fun to watch in MLS. So after this game, Real Salt Lake sits at 19 points with 10 games played. So they have a game in hand over San Jose, LAFC, and Minnesota, teams in front of them. So if Real Salt Lake wins that game in hand, they're sitting at 22 points and third in the Western Conference. So right now, as it stands, they are fifth in the Western Conference with those 19 points. They have a +5 goal differential, which is actually better than Minnesota, who sits above them with -2. So this team, I'm not going to say it yet. I'm not going to put that curse on them. But man, are they fun to watch. So, and they got their first clean sheet of the year, 2-0. Hoffa Cabral, dude is outstanding. Is he as good as Nick Mermondo? No. But he's still really good. He's an upgrade over what they had. I would dare to say he's the best goalkeeper they've had since Nick Raimondo. Not that that is terribly difficult to say, but here we are. So if you can catch this team, please do so, especially before Larry H. Miller and the Larry H. Miller group jack the prices up to where you can't go see a game. Go see a game before that happens, because it'll be fun, especially with the weather getting a lot more warm and pleasant to just sit and watch 90 minutes of football. Please do it, because this team is young and they are ascending. There are some names you recognize as well if you have been paying attention, like DeAndre Yedlin. He is on Real Salt Lake for whatever reason. Justin Glad. He's been around forever. He's still on the team. So, and then obviously you got the star, Diego Luna. And yes, this team, I'm not going to say they're for real, but they are young and they're fun. Kind of reminds you of another team in Utah, right? Yeah, kind of like the Mammoth. So, yes, go watch this team. 2-0 against Portland. They are 6-1-3 on the season so far. That's much better than what I thought they'd be at this point. So enjoy them. And Zavier Gozo might become your favorite player, not named Diego Luna. That's kind of where we're at. All right, and now lastly, jumping to the Utah Jazz. Don't read the synopses of what this team needs to do in the offseason by ESPN, because you know who it's written by? Bobby freaking Marks. So no, you don't read what he has to say, and if you do read what he has to say, just think that the Jazz are going to do something opposite. Because if you do the opposite of what Bobby Marks wants you to do, your team's probably going to do well. Looking at players that are out of contract that might come back, or former rookies, young guys that need a contract. Obviously, it's Walker Kessler. Talked about it before. He needs a contract. He needs to come back to Utah to make their starting five work in the manner that they want it to be. And I've talked about that in previous episodes. I'll probably talk about it a little bit more as we go deeper into the summer. Jusuf Nurkic probably does need to come back. He was a triple-double machine, and he fits very well as a pivot 5 for this team. He a very, 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 very poor man's Nikola Jokic is really what Jusuf Nurkic can do. Other guys, Bezembang has an option. I think they keep him on as a depth guy, maybe a guy who will bounce between the G League, I almost said the ABA, the G League and the NBA. But everyone else is probably going to be gone. Kevin Love, I know Jazz fans want him back. It sounds like he wants to come back. I don't know if he's going to play another year, but if he's not going to, they need to hire him onto the staff because he's just a guy you want just on your team somewhere. And every team in the league has their eyes on Kevin Love to be a coach. So why not just lock him up in Utah for a little bit? Other than that, they need to retain, maybe even get a preemptive strike on Keontae George and Isaiah Collier to get them for longer term. Bryce Sensabaugh, maybe. I don't think it'll be a long-term deal, maybe like a 2 or 3 year deal. But Cody Williams, pound sand. Bye. That was the pick that caused a shakeup in the scouting department for Utah. And, pound sand, thanks for the memories, bye. So that's really what the Jazz need to do this offseason, regardless of what happens with the lottery. They have 11.5% chance of selecting first. It's not going to happen. The NBA is not going to allow that to happen because they've made Utah the poster child for tanking for whatever stupid reason. All right. I'm not going to go into that anymore because I'll run out of time, but thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. Please like, review, comment, subscribe, wherever it is, however you listen. Share this with one person that you think would enjoy the program, and I will see you next week when we spelunk back into the Matt Cave.